It's been 2 years since the terror group Hamas launched the October 7 attacks on Israel, triggering a war in Gaza that has taken a devastating toll on both Israelis and Palestinians. There have been several attempts to bring the conflict to an end, and right now there's another one on the table, put forward by the US and Israel last week. So, in this Squiz Shortcut, we will unpack what's in that plan, where the war is up to, and potentially what's next. Squiz Shortcuts is the backstory to the big news stories. I'm Larissa Moore.
And I'm Andrew Williams.
Andrew, there have been a lot of different plans put forward to bring the war in Gaza to an end, but they've never been quite able to finalise the deal.
Yeah, there have always been a couple of points that either side couldn't overcome, and this latest attempt has been put forward by the US and Israel. As you said, Hamas has agreed to certain parts of it. That could see the remaining hostages taken by Hamas in those 7th of October terror attacks released very soon, but there are a few conditions in the plan that Hamas wants to discuss first.
Yeah, they sure do, and that is what's happening as we speak, with the help of mediators in Egypt. Now, this latest effort has come about after US President Donald Trump stood in front of the world's media next to Israeli PM Benjamin Netanyahu last week at the White House. He outlined what was in the proposal himself.
Yeah, he's thrown his weight behind this particular plan. He's basically told Hamas, this is your last chance to have a role in how this war ends. So if Hamas doesn't sign on to this deal, Trump said he'll give his full backing to Netanyahu to, in his words, finish the job of destroying the group.
Yeah, he says Hamas will face obliteration if they don't play ball. So we thought it would be helpful to unpack what's in the plan and take a look at how it's proposed to work. And we will get into that. But today, as you mentioned, it's a grim anniversary. It's been 2 years since the 7th of October terror attacks.
And that's when Hamas militants crossed the border from Gaza into Israel, killing around 1,200 people in a series of attacks on communities, a desert music festival and an army base. 251 people were taken hostage by those militants. Israel's response was immediate. Netanyahu declared war on Hamas, and the Israeli Defense Forces launched a military campaign that was aimed at destroying Hamas and regaining control of the Gaza Strip.
2 years on, the war has taken a massive toll. The Gaza Health Authority says more than 67,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since the war began. The cities have been bombed mostly to rubble, and a lot of key infrastructure, we're talking water, power, hospitals, schools, destroyed.
And that's what's resulted in what aid organisations are calling a humanitarian crisis. Millions of Palestinians have been displaced from their homes, and those same aid agencies say that parts of Gaza are experiencing famine because of an Israeli blockade preventing them from accessing basic supplies. Now, Israel denies that, but there have been reports of children dying of hunger and disease. That led to Israel being accused of genocide by a UN Commission of Inquiry last month. You might remember us talking about that on Squiz today.
On the Israeli side, there have been losses of soldiers in the ongoing fighting, but the military combat itself hasn't spread into Israel, apart from a couple of missile attacks by Iran in support of Hamas, but those were intercepted. Turning now, though, to Netanyahu's goals, defeating Hamas has been a focus of his government and really its end game for the war. Reports from Israel say what the people really want is a return of the hostages, and there's now renewed hope for that.
Yeah, there is. There are 48 hostages remaining in Gaza. 20 of those are thought to still be alive. And over the weekend, Hamas has agreed to release them as part of this peace plan that's been put forward by Trump, pending further discussions. But before we get into how that plan will work, it's also just worth covering how the international community has reacted to this war and how it's unfolded.
Yeah, because over the years, there's been a bit of a shift in a couple of countries' attitudes and policies. At the start, a lot of countries stood firmly behind Israel's right to defend itself. As the months have dragged on, as conditions have worsened in Gaza and for Palestinian citizens caught up in this conflict, some countries have shifted their stance.
Yeah, they have. As we just saw at the UN General Assembly, most of the world supports Palestinian statehood. More than 150 of the 190-odd UN member countries already recognise Palestine. And this year, Australia, the UK, France and Canada, along with a handful of others, joined that list and changed their stance. And political analysts say that's led to Israel being far more isolated diplomatically than it was in the early days of this war.
As for Netanyahu's attitude to the issue of Palestinian statehood, he's dug in. He says Israel will not allow a terror state to be shoved down our throat. That's his quote. Any post-war plans that lead to that outcome would be opposed by Israel. The US is open to Palestinian statehood, but says it would have to be worked through with Israel first. Lots then to unpack still, as we can see. With that in mind, we will take a look at what's in this latest peace plan and how it would work. Andrew, Trump's peace plan has been called the most serious proposal yet to end the war in Gaza, partly because Trump has put his support behind it, and also because it has the support of a number of key Arab states. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates.
Yeah, and getting them on side as key mediators in the conflict, but also countries that would be heavily involved in the reconstruction of Gaza after the fact, adds pressure to Hamas to come to the table. So this peace plan is being called the 20-point plan. Political analysts that we've read say that it's for the most part a new version of ceasefire proposals that already existed. It was written by US Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff and Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. He's Ivanka's husband. So Kushner has been a key advisor to Trump in putting together a strategy for Gaza, particularly on how it might be rebuilt after the war ends.
Yeah, he has. Side note, he was the one behind Trump's real estate plan to pitch Gaza to become the Riviera of the Middle East. Coming back to this plan, though, it really can be condensed down to 5 main points. 20-point plan, 5 main points. The first we've already covered, that's the return of the hostages, both alive and dead, within 72 hours of the deal being accepted. In return, Israel would release a number of Palestinian prisoners.
Yeah, they've agreed to turn over nearly 2,000 living Palestinian prisoners, and for the remains of every Israeli hostage returned, Israel says that it will release the remains of 15 Palestinians. So the second main point in the plan is that Hamas has to disarm and play no role in governing Gaza going forward. Instead, it would be governed by a body called the Palestinian Authority, which is a separate entity to Hamas. Its leader, Mahmoud Abbas, has praised this plan. He says that what matters now is an immediate ceasefire.
And then going on, members of Hamas who surrender their weapons and agree to peaceful coexistence can get amnesty or safe passage out of Gaza. And that's a point to remember. We'll come back to it in a moment. Another condition of the plan is that Israel will withdraw its troops from Gaza in phases as international stabilisation forces move in.
Yeah, and eventually those forces would hand over to a new Palestinian police force. And speaking of new bodies that are setting up, Trump announced that there would also be a board of peace that would be established to oversee things until that Palestinian Authority-led government is ready to take over. So the official name of that Board of Peace will be the Gaza International Transitional Authority, and it's going to be chaired by Trump himself with involvement from other world leaders. And one world leader that he named was former British Prime Minister Tony Blair.
Yeah, that's caused a little bit of a stir. There's some concern amongst Palestinian people, some of whom remember Tony Blair from previous peace efforts. He served as the Middle East envoy for the Quartet of International Powers. That's the US, EU, Russia and the UN. In that role, he was meant to bring economic development to the region and create conditions for a two-state solution. General consensus is he was ineffective there.
Yeah, but he's going to be back potentially in some form on this Board of Peace. And on top of that, Trump says there would also be a massive aid effort to rebuild the Strip. That would include major infrastructure for water and power, along with hospitals and roads and schools. And just on that issue of Palestinian statehood that we mentioned, the plan does talk about a pathway to an independent Palestinian state, but it's vague. There's no firm timeline set around it. So that's sort of still very much in the far future of this plan. As we said, Israel has accepted this plan. The ball is now in Hamas's court to accept it, or, as Trump put it, pay in hell.
Over the weekend, Hamas have accepted the hostage part of the deal. They've agreed also to hand over governance of Gaza to Palestinian technocrats, so they're officials chosen for office on the merits of their skills or background.
Yeah, and so while Hamas acceptance has given Israelis some hope that those hostages will be returned imminently, some analysts have pointed out that this peace plan does contain a few conditions that Israel has previously said that it just wouldn't accept. So Netanyahu called them red lines. One of those is that Israel wants Hamas destroyed rather than, as we mentioned, giving its members safe passage out of Gaza. And the other is that establishment of a Palestinian state.
Yeah, experts have also pointed out that the West Bank, which is an area occupied by Palestinians, isn't mentioned in the peace plan at all. That could cause issues down the track because Palestinians see both Gaza and the West Bank as two parts of the same future state.
Yeah, so what some commentators have suggested is that Netanyahu has agreed to this plan because he's been under pressure from Trump to do so. He's been able to get it past his right-wing cabinet, who maybe wouldn't have ordinarily agreed with it because he's got Trump's backing to finish Hamas if they refuse or breach that agreement. As for Hamas, the jury's out there too as to whether it'll agree to conditions that it's objected to in the past, like total disarmament. It's never said that it would agree to that. Whether it'll do that now or not, we'll find out through these negotiations. It's also previously asked for guarantees that Israel won't keep operating in Gaza, so there are still lots of bridges to cross before this deal is done.
Absolutely a lot of bridges to cross. As for what's next, political experts say the reality is both sides may accept the plan in principle, but then stall or undermine it in practice. Ultimately, its success or failure will come down to whether either side is ready to compromise. And that is our shortcut to unpacking the latest plan for Gaza. Now on to our recommendations. So each week we like to give Squizzes a recommendation for further reading, watching and listening on the topic. Andrew, we thought this one was pretty dense, so you've just got one reading recommendation for us.
Yeah, if you want to dive deeper into things, get even more into the density of it, there's an article published in The Guardian which gives a good overview of that 20-point plan and its likelihood of succeeding and where the possible pain points are. So we'll put a link to that in the episode notes.
Still plenty more to come, though,
Absolutely.
On this one. Thank you for listening, and remember, share this episode with your mates if you think that they would like to get across the backstory to the big news stories. As always, if you've got an idea for a shortcut, shoot it through to hello@thesquiz.com.au. Until next time.